Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is July 27, 2022. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here today with Marcelo Zabaloy. Is that the
Uh,
correct way to pronounce it?
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very much
And
like
where
that. Yeah.
where are you calling in from, Marcelo?
It's Argentina. The city is Bahia Blanca, which is in the beginning of the Patagonia region, at the north part of the Patagonia region.
Thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure. I'm really happy. And the first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
Well, I will try not to sound witty. I was not ready for that question, but I know that you place original questions. Well, I think that the basic is to be alive and not to suffer. If you can put two things.
Yeah, to be alive and not suffer. I like that. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
The inevitable, which is the media, which I regard, I have a look at every single day, or in the say a few minutes in television, local television, and some international channels, TV5 and the BBC and CNN and something like that. A few minutes, just a few minutes. The rest of it is what you can not help see, and you get information even if you don't want to receive it. But those are the channels. In the old days, there were, like you yourself, there were the newspapers or the television, but mostly it's about media and, of course, the things I read. But that's not information, I think. Or would you consider books information? I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I would say so. Did you grow up a reader because your
Yeah,
parents were reading as an example?
yeah.
They told you to read or on your own?
Well, no. At home, just my mother. She read a few books in her life, and my father scantily read, apart from newspapers. But I love reading. I started, or better said, I fall in love with reading since I started to read at school. That gave me pleasure. It didn't make me suffer. So it was the Spanish lessons at school, and then I went to the English school when I was a kid. I was 5 years old or 6 years old when I started my English school. So reading was a normal thing for me, and it gave me pleasure. Mm.
Very good. Is this need or want to collect or gather information more innate in humans or more invented?
Uh, what's supposed to be invented, or the other option? Could you please repeat that question?
Innate, like it's innate for us to eat. It's
Yeah,
in
no, of course, yes, innate. Yeah, thank you. The need of information. I think it's innate. I think you need to hear voices. You need to know that your mother is near when you're a little boy, a little kid, and all you are asking is for somebody to send you some signal, and that signals are information. Where are you? What are you going to do? Where I am going to go? Where are we going to school today? I'm referring to the early stages of life, isn't it? Uh, I, in that sense, I think that everybody needs to be informed in that sense. Apart from that, everything, the word says, the word itself says it. You need information, something that comes from outside and forms you, isn't it? So
very
I'm not. I don't want to give you definitions of,
no,
but
that's good. I love it. I like etymology and I like to break down syllables and words. That's good.
yeah.
So Do thoughts create emotions?
Yes, for example, you are reading a poem. Yesterday I was reading a poem. Actually, my wife was reading a poem from Rubén Darío because she came across with a book, very, very old book, and she started reading a poem about the princess that she was sad. What's happening with this princess that she's sad? And it's a very romantic and long poem. And she started crying. She wasn't sad. She wasn't thinking of crying. And she started reading. So she started thinking. And the thoughts that were in those verses made her sad. So, in that sense, reading a poem could actually produces feelings, thoughts that induce feelings, and it may work, I guess, the other way around as well.
The way around,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, that was a good example. I appreciate you giving me an example like that. That's what we're all about: storytelling, anecdotes. That was beautiful. I love that. And fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I.
I'm trying to remember what Stephen Dedalus says in Ulysses. Things or thoughts that they are thinking, or something like that. It's a jeu de mots. It's what's a thought? When you think that you are thinking. It doesn't take you anyway. It sounds nice, isn't it? When you think, you're thinking that you think. It's a process. It cannot be, at least by my. I cannot do that operation of dissecting some thoughts, but the fact of thinking, of dissecting a thought, it's thinking.
That's good. McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. And
Yeah.
Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it.
Well, yes, I agree with that. Normally, it happens to me now, so it's a live experience what I'm telling. I don't know what I'm going to say in the next few seconds.
Yeah.
I am not expecting. I know because I've regarded. I watched your interview with Hervé Michel the other day, and I know where you go with your questions. Otherwise, I couldn't have be ready for nothing. But it's true. I think it's in the same moment that you open your mouth that the dam opens and the water flows in some direction. And then you may be responsible or not according to the degree of your intoxication of what you are saying.
Yeah.
But there are lots of people who can, and I admire them, who can structure a sentence. Well, that's very British. I would say too British. The way they you see young boys at school, because they are taught to do that, how the reasoning flows in one direction and they arrive to the exact point where the teacher has told them that they must arrive. I wouldn't be able to do that in Spanish. It's easier for me to reason like that in another language, in English, because I have to think before I speak, which I do not do in Spanish. In your own language, you don't think.
Really, really good point. My friend, I was talking to him once and I said, Americans speak in half sentences. They don't complete their sentences. And he said, deal with it.
Yeah.
I
But
wasn't I wasn't telling him, you should be speaking in complete sentences. I was just making an observation and he said, yeah, deal with it. So what?
yes, of course. It's all half words. Everything is said in half words.
Yeah.
It's in the translation of Ulysses and in translation of Finnegan's Wake, I got to learn very lots of little things sayings and and that is those short thoughts. One of the most important things is that I understood that everything is said in some sense, and even then in half senses.
Yeah.
Nothing is clear. You read a page in Finnegan's Wake. What can you say about clarity or the word sense? And I am writing something about an Argentinian writer, which he's very famous, at least in the Spanish-speaking world. His name is Cesar Aira. He wrote more than 100 novels. You would say it's impossible. It is. And they were all published, short, very short, medium, but 106 novels, I think. And all his writing goes, you will never know where is he going. He hardly finishes a paragraph coherently. And he said, is he drunk? No, that's his method. It's a way of saying something without caring too much where is he going.
Yeah.
It's something like what you're saying.
It's
Jerry.
special. It's like McLuhan said, a half a truth is still a lot of a truth. A half a sentence is still a lot of a sentence. And so can humans think without language?
What about dumb people? They are human. They cannot speak. What about deaf, dumb? Dumb. They can. They can certainly think because they are taught to. And they are taught not only with gestures. If you were, that person was deaf, dumb, but living in the middle of the bush in Australia, in the middle of nowhere, and with just an Aboriginal who has not a book or a paper or nothing to rely on for his lessons, he would be teaching gestures, and those gestures would be language. It wouldn't be English. It wouldn't be, but it would be some sort of their jargon or other proper language. So I don't think that somebody, I don't believe that somebody can think or reason without language. Can do some basic operations or have the kind of ideas that an animal could have for the basic functions of life, but nothing very much elaborated, I think. I think.
So Chomsky says a language is not just words. It's culture, tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. Marcelo, what do you do when language doesn't work, when language breaks down?
Well, normally I dream. I am dreaming. I'm sleeping, and that's what it happens. What you do, you want to recover some thought because it brings you anguish or happiness, and there's nothing. How many times in that process of translating Finnegan's Wake, I was sleeping and something like I was dreaming of something like a sentence or a structure or something related to the text that was supposed to give me a solution in the case I could remember that text in the following morning, which never happened. And that's what you can do. You can do nothing. Just perceive that you are going through some process of disintegration of what you know as language, and it's not a tool. You cannot do nothing with that. Just be aware that something is happening in your head that's sort of clue for something, but again, everything is blurred. It's hidden, and normally you cannot. Some people would, when they have no more means to express what they feel, will go and get some some stuff to smoke or some pills to have or acids or something, and they get from there or from alcohol the words that they cannot get some from anywhere else. And then you have poetry that makes you cry and you don't know why are you crying like a bloody stupid. Because there's one, probably you know them. It's very Argentinian. It's a rock group. His name is Indio as Indian. You just put in the website, you put Indio Solari, like Sol, Solary. Indio, of course, is a nickname, and Solari is his real apellido, which is not his surname. And he's got a rock band started in the 80s. He's now is ill. He's got Parkinson or something like that, but he's still kicking in the good sense of the word. And his band, they gather 150,000 people, the biggest crowd you can ever see, and the music is lovely, but the words, the lyrics, you wouldn't understand, and neither would I. I have to think, or better said, I have to try to be as sensible as possible to get some meaning out of what he's singing. Because the words, you just get sensations. It's extraordinary. And that's an example of broken language.
Yes.
And language. People of everybody there in 100,000 people, everyone there of any social class, they jump and sing and know the songs from the very beginning to right to the end, and it's fantastic. If you have the opportunity to have a look at that,
I'll check. T.S. Eliot said, "Poetry can communicate before it's understood."
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't need to understand it.
Yeah. And so your feelings observing humans, are we more feeling beings or more thinking beings? I know it's both, but just your general hunch.
Well, normally you are sensitive. All your body is a sort of antenna. And you can only think with your brain, with a little part of your body, say a piece of cake. That's the thinking stuff, and the rest of your body is feeling. You can feel pain everywhere unless you're paraplegic, and you feel you're cold, you are hungry, you've got urgencies of any kind to fulfill. And you think, of course. Yeah. But I would say that the biggest part of your body is not dedicated to thinking, but to feel. Yeah. And 90% of the things you do, if not 99.99% of the things you do, are because you feel them. You are always giving response to feelings and reacting permanently. To hot, to cold weather, to rain, to fear, to the pressure of the public or pressure of a partner or whatever. So in that sense, I guess your question, I've never, Gary, we just know each other since a few minutes, but I've never been asked these sort of questions, and therefore I've never thought about them.
No, you're doing fine. This is just fun, casual. These are two questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. Is thinking a function of the soul?
A function. That would mean that the soul could operate, produce something. if you believe in the fact that with your meat and your blood are mixed with something else which you cannot define, and you call that something that you cannot define, you call it soul. Well, yes.
Can machines think? Is his second question.
All I know is the artificial. But it's all depending of the what you write them to do, programs and everything. So machines themselves wouldn't, of course, think
Yeah.
in the sense of that we are given to think to original, obey to an original feeling. That's it. Feeling something.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
One thing you don't pursue because you don't think it's so possible to get rid of it, to reach it as happiness, in the sense of the idea of happiness that you are going to get everything you want. I'm not so silly. And meaning is in some things more, you're more likely to arrive at some port. Happiness in itself, it's it's impossible to say I want happiness or I pursue happiness.
Yeah.
It will come in very small doses when she wants to come, if she's a woman, isn't it?
That was the correct answer.
Yeah, I don't know.
Marcelo, does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're or creating it?
It's too deep. I wouldn't be able to answer that. I can guess, but I could guess as if I had to say quickly what I think by intuition, I think that it's a in-out process. It goes from inside outside. It's just a perception. I have no reason
Good.
to say.
No, that's what I'm after. Percept, not
Yeah,
concept. What's
yeah, okay.
fast? Yeah, again, another guess. I'm for guessing hunch. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
I have been told that's nothing faster than speed of light. So I must believe Mr. Einstein.
So now to the poet Audre Lorde. She said, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest? What new tool do you gravitate towards?
To dismantle the Lord's house? Which Lord?
If you want to apply the quotes to the question, that's fine. He says to dismantle the master's house. So again,
Yes.
you can determine what master means in your terms.
Well, I can see it's not my example, but a good example would be what did James Joyce did do with the English language. That was the master's house, the English language, and with the tools that the master had, which was the grammar, the tuition, everything that he learned at school. He used those tools to dismantle the language and build it again, isn't it, or something like that? I wouldn't be able to do that. Maybe some other thing more humble. Maybe I could. Yeah, I know the procedure exists, and one can do that. Actually, you can grab a policeman who has detained you, and you can grab his pistol and kill him, and you're using the tools, and you're getting rid of the master who
Yeah.
took. Yeah, so the procedure is basically possible. That
No, that's a great answer because we're going to get into Joyce a lot. But Joyce, his tool was the grammar, rhetoric of the English language.
Yep.
What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
No, nothing. Try. Yeah. Of course. Try not to. I got a little bit of backache. So if my back doesn't ache, I'm happy. I'm
Good.
comfortable. I will sleep. Yeah. I am not very. I'm not too worried about nothing. More, yeah. I am worried about the basic things. I want everybody means everybody to be happy, to be healthy, for little children not to be cold or excessively hot. That all my friends and family are okay and they don't suffer any
Yeah.
illness, and that's all.
It's beautiful. Well put. So Marshall McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound, the poet, that artists, and when I say artists, I mean writers,
Yeah, in
computer
general.
fix,
Yeah,
computer repairmen,
yeah.
translators, painters, everything, musicians.
Human
Artists
beings.
are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions so we can learn to cope with what we don't like about the inventions. So I ask you the question McLuhan probed his whole career. Why do we humans ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Maybe because we want to do that. It's no. I cannot think of a clear answer to your question. We human beings are antennas. It was said by Ezra Pound, which I have read some things of him. I know who he is and everything like that. So, what he wanted to say about having antennas, I cannot say that's not right. It's I understand that people have antennas and they use it too. You were saying, what do they use them for?
To broadcast the effects of our inventions.
Yeah.
Like
Uh,
that's what Bob Dylan says. I'm just a radio station, and these things are just coming through me like a
yeah, but
vehicle.
I would say that there are much more antennas. Every single human being is one, and he's
Yeah,
always absorbing the few good things that are in the air and the lots of naughty things that he perceives, and he transmit in his small word. He's letting that information flow to his family, to
yeah,
his fellows at school or in their job. And so I think that artists in general think too much about themselves. They are important. They are
yeah,
beautiful people, as you are important, and almost everybody is
yeah.
important.
I agree. That's beautiful. McLuhan said the Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can.
Who are them?
The Balinese from Bali, people from
Ah,
Bali.
okay, okay,
They
okay.
just do everything. They don't go, I'm doing art or I'm doing this. But Marcelo, do artists have moral obligation?
That's something that it's being discussed every single day, which is the obligation of a man who lives in a country like we used to live here 30 almost 35 years ago under a military dictatorship. What were the obligations of a writer? If I had been an active writer by then, I was very young and I was feeding my family. I wasn't in the business of writing books. But what if by then in 1976 here was my obligation to denounce the crimes of the dictatorship? Was my obligation to write a novel like Ulysses or like whichever other novel you want? No, I think they have no more obligation than any other person. The same obligations. They don't need to be martyrs. They don't need to be the ones who denounce abuses or whatever pest the society is suffering. They just need to do what they are good for doing, which is writing, if they are writers. And having said that, there's a line of writers who are specialized in politics, or because the passion is that one, and they do both things. They write novels and they write from a moral point of view, and they but in exception made of those extreme cases, I would say no. There's no moral obligation because I can write, I can draw a character who's a drunkard, who beats his family, who violates his daughters and sons, and I can argue in favor of him. I can be in his shoes, and what? Who can criticize me if I am writing a book? That's all this.
No,
The answer is no.
it's very well put. Thank you. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
The old ideas, I know. It's another answer from Mr. Stephen Dedalus. History. You know what it follows. So you can be afraid of things that you have witnessed. We have witnessed far too many bad old ideas, and a few good ones. There are many good things that are in the past, but as ideas, the new ones, I'm not afraid. They didn't happen yet. Yeah. And if they look very cruel or very nasty, you won't be afraid. You are going to battle against that. So no, not afraid of that. No.
Marcelo, this is fun. You really get what I'm after, and I appreciate it. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of them?
One of them. I was 3 years old. I have very, very early memories of my life. Is that what you're asking me, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, we were dining at home in South American Argentinian families, and many, many years ago, it was usual to live in the same house, your grandfathers, your parents, and your uncles, for example. That was our case. We lived in a very big house, and we were sitting at a table dining, and there were some, apart from my father and mother and my two little sisters, my uncle and my grandparents, there were two ladies who were invited to dine at home. And I tell you again, 3 years old. So what could I know about the bottom of a lady? I'm trying not to be rude, but yeah, nothing. It wasn't the, how you say, the wake up of sexuality. 3 years old.
Yeah.
And my uncle, he's a single man. He died a single man. A very nice man. We loved him. Rather silly. He was a rather stupid man with stupid ideas. So he called me up to him and said, "Come here, Marcelo, come here." What? And in a very slow voice, he said, Go where that girl is there over there, one of the two ladies, and touch her bottom."
He told you to do that?
Yes, I was not. And I didn't know what I was doing, and so I went there, and tap, and this lady turned down, and without saying nothing, in front of all my family, she slapped my face.
Wow.
Very soundly. Puff! a very good blow she gave me. I was astonished and not radical because I didn't know what, but I was ashamed. A 3-year-old boy would know what shame is and what a blow. Why did I get that blow? What did I do? I just touched the bottom of that lady. From that day, it was a rough way to respect a woman. I got to know very, very early that women were not supposed to be touched by any idiot. Have him 3 years old or 30, it's the same thing. So I consider myself very well taught and unjustly slapped. But yeah, it's a good memory, a very old one. It's not a good one,
But
but
that's
it's one of the first, yes.
but you anticipated the next question. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
It is a curse.
Wow, that's heavy. So can you
Of course.
tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, who had an impact on you, just briefly,
Yeah,
like a role model, and what was that impact? Just briefly.
yeah. From at home, the typical image of the father. He wasn't hard. He was straight, a straight man, very kind, and without ser- without sermons, without lecturing me, he gave me lots of good information about how to proceed in my life. And
Beautiful.
outside, one of my father's friend, because my father died when he was very young. I was 17 years old when my father died, and he was 46. So one of his friends, I continued the friendship that he had with this man, Cesar, another Cesar Osati, a very, very good friend of my father, whom I inherited that friendship. And he was a very clever man, very clever. Those persons who are practical, he had a solution for every tiny thing. And he told me, he continued the education that my father could do. He taught me lots of practical things and good advice for everything. And these days, he has died some 20 years ago. And every time I have something I am not sure about what to do, how to proceed, I I said to myself, what would this man, Cesar, or my father, but what would this man would do? And I would follow his advice. He was never wrong, and I loved him. So
Beautiful. Well,
yeah.
really well put. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Well, Roman Catholic, but just they gave me the basics, and no, just they took me to church. And when I was 5 years old, I was starting to read, and as I am a tall man, it's 6 foot something. And when I was a little boy, I was a boy, but not little. So they think that because I was 5 years old, I was an adult, and I was apt to go to church and do that short course of Christianship, and I got baptized and all that. But I really didn't pay too much attention to religion.
Do you
Yes,
pray?
later on in my life, I became more serious, but not a. Uh, I'm not an Irish, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Do you pray?
No, I know, no, I don't. Unless I've got the water up to here, and I try not to put myself in that situation. I wouldn't. Yeah,
If
I feel myself rightful if I do that.
Marcelo, if God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate. Beautiful. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
uh, I have been very, very lucky. So in my personal life, the only life I have, I don't have a personal and extra personal life. So, but I never met with evil people. I know that they exist, as everybody else know, and I think that there's people who are really, really evil, and the other the other possibility could be, but I think more that some people, a, a big part of the millions and millions that inhabit this world are definitely not good people.
So the basic question is really, Marcelo, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up with a few modern thinkers. Alan Watts said, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais, keep your friends
Yeah,
close and your
yeah,
enemies closer.
yeah.
JF,
I knew that. Yeah.
yeah, JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And
Mm,
Fellini says, I need an enemy. It's a
mm.
lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? First, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Well, he might be right. After thinking, he arrived to that conclusion. I am nobody to tell he's wrong. But the thing is, I've never had an enemy, and I expect to die without having met one. I know that it's in what for the things I've read, and I read that Chinese definition of having your enemies, your friends near and your enemies nearer. Uh, that looks intelligent, but for that you have to have an enemy. You need an enemy, and if there's a thing I don't need is an enemy. So
Right.
yeah,
It's good attitude. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin, Volta Cinema. He
yeah,
he checked out. He said, "This is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can
yeah.
go outside and see a real?"
Yeah.
Years later, Faulkner said, "Sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism." Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Well, the thing is that living life is part. That's part of living a life. It's
Yeah.
seeing how your neighbors are living, and instead of go and peeping the door behind your neighbors, it's better to have a good movie, and you can see great spectacles that you could actually see if you go and knock the door in your neighbor's house and say, "Would you let me in and let me see how you live?" And yeah, yeah,
You know, I want to ask you about your career. I know you were a computer and typewriter repairman and you used your hands.
yeah.
And then you've done a lot with studying James Joyce and translating. So, your two things I want to know, when your tipping point, what caused you to go into repair, computer and typewriter repair? What was your tipping point? When did you go, "Oh, I can do that to make my living"? Like, did you go to college or school to study that? What did you study growing
Yeah.
up?
I studied uh, the English all since I was 5 years old until I finished the secondary school. I made my primary secondary school and started studying law, but I finished when my father died. So I came back. I was studying in Buenos Aires. I came back to my city and to give a hand in my father's business, and he had that. He worked repairing typewriters and all that. So I started with that. I was already married. I started to have kids, six in total. So I didn't have time for literacy occupations, and I just worked and worked with my hands and meant things that weren't working, and then I started cabling and computer cabling and putting installing computers and all those things of the old days. But at the same time, I never stopped reading, and I just read because I wanted to. So, and then in the process of reading, I came across James Joyce, and I started, and then I started because I wanted to translate as a way of understanding what I was reading, Ulysses, just for the sake of doing it. And when I finished that, I started with Finnegan's Wake because I wanted to go through the same process. I was working, still working. I've always worked until I was 60 years old, or a bit less. And that's my earning was, I earned my life not by the writings or readings, but with the hard work. The rest of it, literature, was just a passion, a pastime. And that way, I translated Ulysses, and after 7 years of working, I finished Finnegan's Wake, and then I kept on doing other things. Nothing was planned; it just happened. And once I finished those translations, I got the contracts, and the works were published, and they got some notoriety. And I wasn't thrown onions and tomatoes on my head, or rotten potatoes, so it worked. Yeah.
Good work. So, what attracted you to pursue Joyce rather than other writers? Who were a couple of the other writers that perked your eyes and ears up? But why did you specifically gravitate towards Joyce?
Well, I came across him, as I told you. I was reading in the course, in the process of reading. You always, as a reader, know that you're stepping up always a little bit. You want more difficulties. You want to try what everybody says is impossible to read, and you want to know why. So that way, by curiosity, I arrived to Joyce. I knew he existed. I have read Dubliners many years ago, but once I came across Ulysses, I wanted, and I read it in English, but it wasn't enough. On the first reading, I finished it after a year, and then I wanted to restart with more information, with more books about Joyce. So it was something like an addiction. And in the second reading of the book, the impulse of translating was automatic. It was just as I told you, Gary, there was nothing planned. It just
Right.
happened.
No, that's good. I understand. What is the function? Well, no, the first we're going to go into poetry a little.
Yes.
Let's talk about poetry a little because Joyce did start as a poet.
Yeah.
And you does George Perec do poetry or just novels?
No novels. Novels. Yeah.
Novels, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what is the function of poetry?
It has one. I don't know.
That's good. Good answer. We'll leave it at that. So, Leo Bersani, he is a literature criticism guy who just died. And he said that when he studied Mallarmé, the symbolist poet, he said, the very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition. I'm curious your feelings on those thought, and does it apply to Joyce? The very crises which threatens the writing by James Joyce sustains Joycean composition. Is it similar? What does that mean?
I don't get it. I don't get it. If it comes from Mallarmé,
It's a
comes from
story of Mallarmé that
yeah. Then that enables. It doesn't allow me to understand nothing what is said by Mallarmé. It's not a prejudice, but it happens to me the same as Lacan. As I read a book by Lacan, and
Yeah,
I can go farther than a second, 2 pages, because it's a way of putting words that I cannot understand. I know that's typically French, but I'm not arguing with you or with him. It's
right.
just I cannot put it right in my head. So it's very difficult to give a logical answer.
No, that's good. I want you to put your cards on the table and
Yeah,
be
yeah.
honest. That's good. And Gary Snyder, the beat nature poet, said, "My task as a poet entails the work of seeing the world without language, then putting that seeing into language."
That's easy to understand, and even I can agree with what you say. And I think that's a good picture of the way a poet works. Uh, but I love poetry. I wouldn't be able to write more than a couple of verses every now and then. I wouldn't show it to nobody. But I understand a poet. I think that they are heroes. The person who declares himself a poet and lives as a poet, if there's such a person yet living in this world, they have all my respect.
Yeah.
There's some poetry I enjoy, there's some poetry I don't understand, and there's some poetry that I make me furious, and that's because my not understanding it. And too many people who say call themselves poets and write imbecilities, stupidities, things that not only have not any meaning, but they are you could live without that. And there are lots of people like that they write poetry and they call themselves poets, and I don't like them. And do you know? Have you read Gombrowicz? Witold Gombrowicz? Do you know him? Gombrowicz?
How do you spell the last name?
Gombrowicz. Gombrowicz.
I
Gombrowicz.
don't I don't know him. Tell me about him.
Well, he lived in the he's a in the he died in 70 something. Well, he was a Poland. He was from Poland, and he ended up in Buenos Aires in Argentina because he came for when World War II started, when Hitler invaded Poland, and he couldn't get back. So he stayed in Buenos Aires without knowing a single word of Spanish, and he lived here for 20 something years. And he was already a writer, very well known in France. And he had published Ferdi Durk. Probably you know that name, Ferdi Durk. Ferdi Durk. Very strange, very strange book. It was published in France around the 30 something. And he was a crazy man, very crazy. He wrote in Spanish and he wrote in English and he wrote in French. And he used to say that poets were a lie, all of them, from the first to the last one. They were liars, that the only things they say were silly things, and that people wanted to appreciate what they read because somebody else told them that was good poetry, but that poetry was rubbish.
Though though he wrote poetry is what you're saying.
No, he wrote novels and he wrote essays and basically novels and diaries.
He
He kept
wrote
a diary.
novels. I got you. He
Yeah,
wrote novels. Well, let's go on that
yeah.
for a second. On what occasion do you lie?
I'm not a liar, except if I have to write something, of course. To write fiction is to lie. But normally, I wouldn't get myself in a position in which I have to lie. And the few lies I've told in my life, there was no other way out. It was
Yeah.
lie or die. So
Lie or die. That's good.
yeah, I went after that. I went to church, and that in those occasions I spoke to the master and said, "Believe me, I had no way out. So
Amazing.
help
But
my God and forget it."
Louis Buñuel, the filmmaker, said, "I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it."
Well, that's excellent. I couldn't agree more with that. Something, yeah, of course, yeah,
But Marcelo, why do
yeah,
we the cliche is the journey is
yeah.
more important than the destination? Why do
But
we why do we have to seek or name a destination if the journey is more important?
well, I don't pay too much attention to those kind. You neither. You don't pay attention to cliches. Neither do I. So I wouldn't look for an explanation for what I do not believe in. So let
Yeah.
them say what they say. There's too many cliches. The journey is the only thing you have. You are going the road, but you are always with the expectation of arriving. And you can enjoy everything, the road, the destination, even though when you arrive it's a disaster. Or so I wouldn't choose. eh? Why choose between the road and the journey and the destination? Eh,
That's good.
Just
You mean keep an
let's
open
go.
mind. Yeah.
Let's go on the road, as Jack Kerouac said, on the road.
Good. That's like we say in my house, travel now, pack later.
Yes, yeah. Later
Okay.
and lighter. Yeah,
Lighter.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so
Both things, late and light,
late,
and
that's
light.
very good. You are poetic. You're really a good wordsmith. So you studied with the best, George
Hmm.
Perec and Joyce. But a screenwriting teacher told me great art, great film, poetry, great novel is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Stanley Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role did intention play in Joyce's creative process?
Well, he said that he was there in the corner clipping his nails while the novel was flowing of his mind, isn't it? So that was he said, but I think he was deeply involved in everything he did. And even though he denied that he was himself, everybody knew who was whom when he was at home, isn't it? So that's more pour la galerie. It's something you say for saying something witty, which I try
Yeah.
not to do. Yeah. So
But how about Marcel Duchamp
yeah,
said there's no art without an audience? How much was
yeah.
Joyce thinking of his audience, his readers, when he was writing?
He was thinking. Otherwise, he wouldn't have written. Yeah, you cannot write a letter without having in mind somebody, a fictional sweetheart or a real one. But you write with an eye on who's going to read that. And to me, whoever says the contrary is just a liar. Because
Yeah,
I agree with the Trump in that there's no art without an audience.
yeah,
Who's going to make a painting or a Madonna or whatever, or to compose a symphony or whatever, thinking of an empty theater? Different is if you liked, you can play the piano or any ins- instrument for the sake of playing, and you can be alone in the middle of nowhere with your guitar and you're happy, and that's art. But apart from that, or you can paint, but would you write in the middle of the desert knowing that you are the only and the last man in the world, who and nobody will see what you are doing? No, but you will gladly play the guitar. Well, in the Titanic, that was the example. There was the orchestra there playing music when they were certain to go down deep. isn't it? That's art.
Beautiful. Marcelo, how much, your guess, your hunch, how much did Joyce understand the wake? How much percentage? 50, 80, 100%? And then how much percentage do you understand the wake?
Well, I think that he understood more than I. But he
But
said,
what would
yeah,
you say percentage wise? What number out of 100 being complete?
no, I think that he, the author, Mr. Joyce, I think he understood every single word he put
He
there.
understood at 100%, you think?
I think he did. Yes, yes, yes. He put all the words that are there, and then he said so. He said that he could give reason for every single word he wrote in the wake, and I had to go through the same process, and I had to try to do the impossible to understand what he wrote, and
In order to translate it.
yes, of course.
Then how
Otherwise, how? Yeah.
would you say you get the wake 100%?
No, 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 no. I'm saying that
What
I had to understand every word he put there to translate it.
in
That
order,
otherwise, yeah.
but how much percentage would you say you get the wake?
It's impossible to say. It's impossible to say. I if there's any, I could say whatever I say could be a nonsense because it's understanding nonsense. How could you do that?
But that's like what didn't you know Hervé Michel?
Hervé, por supuesto, he is my friend. Yes, of course.
Yeah, you know what he said? He said that Joyce got the wake 100% and he gets the wake 100%. And I thought that was the best answer I ever got. But just give me a guess. What do you think you get it? 50, 75, 80? What percentage do you think you get?
The concept of the book and the parts and everything, I get 100%.
Yeah.
The concept of it. I know where's each part, why it was written, and I understood all the words that could be understandable because
Yeah.
I dug in it and I made all the process to get each word individually and put them there. So, but I wouldn't be able to say that I understood 100%, 80%, because I would have to define first what is to understand something that is not under the powers of sense, in the sense that you give to the word,
Yeah.
or the word of meaning. What does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? Word. Wait. Have you got 1 minute more?
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, pest! I miss the post. That the more carrots you chop, the more turnips you slit, the more Murphys you peel, the more onions you cry over, the more bull beef you butch, the more mutton you hack, the more pot herbs you pound, the fiercer the fire and the longer your spoon, and the harder you gruel with more grease to your elbow, the merrier fumes your new Irish stew. What the hell is that? I love it. I love it.
That's Marcelo. That's Marcelo singing the wake. What page was that?
That's 190.
That was beautiful. I love it.
It's heaps. Every single page of it has little things like that.
Little
It
and
was
big.
dusk that the tears of night began to fall, first by ones and twos, then by threes and fours, at last by fives and sixes of sevens, for the tired ones were waking as we weep now with them. Oh, 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 parla plus. What's that?
That's beautiful.
If you want to speak about poetry, I am not too very fond of speaking about generals and poetry and all those things. But I can see that here in this book, there are so many things. But how could I say I'm understanding it?
Yeah,
The sound is beautiful. The I grasp the meaning. I know the Irish stew. I once ate in Dublin in Christchurch, in front of Christchurch. I ate one Irish stew. I said, "What's this? It's water, turnips, 2 or 3 carrots, a piece of meat. We have here in Argentina 100 times more lovely stews. I cook myself stews, so I know what I'm saying. And but that doesn't allow me. The fact that I have translated the book and I haven't got too many objections. People who really know what they do, they are looking at this with respect.
yeah.
So I know, but that I refuse to say that I have understood an X%.
Good.
A good part of it, yes, I agree with that. But I
Really
can
good.
say that Hervé Michel, yes, he's got 100% of the book in his mind, and he's right. I know that.
Beautiful. So, um, your what attracted you to pursue George Perec? I say Perec, but you say in
Correct.
Olippo.
Yeah, Olipo.
Olippo is such
Yeah.
a unique, almost mathematical literature movement, but it is very Wakean too. That book of, Guide to the World or Guide to Life. What attracted you to Perec? And tell us a little about what you learned from him.
Well, actually, it was rugby, the sport, the game of rugby, who took me to know Perec because I'm involved. I was in my times, I was a rugby player. My sons, 4 sons, have played rugby, and I organized a tournament here in Argentina, which I invited teams from overseas, and we happened to receive 2 sides from France. It was in their long holidays, July, August. Yeah, July. July was. No, it was for Easter. It was in April, and I couldn't communicate with them, and that was 20 years ago. And I couldn't. I spoke with them in English and in Spanish with some of them who spoke Spanish. So I decided to learn French, and so as to be able for the next year when they come back, and they came, to be able to speak, to, to connect with them. So I took a very, very forced course of French given around literature, which was my main interest. So the first text in French I came across was a little bit of Perec, La Vie Mode d'Emploi, or Life User's Manual. And I was so pleased with what I read that as soon as I was able to have a reasonable level of French, I went to France and I bought as many books of Perec, starting with La Vie Mode d'Emploi. And that's the way I learned French, reading French literature. So I read all his work from the first to the last, everything. And
Wow.
I became I love him. He's one of the most brilliant writers I've ever read. He, with Queneau, with Harry Matthews, which is a North American. You know Harry Matthews. Harry Matthews, he was a very good friend of him. And, well, that I arrived to Perec and to Queneau and to the early Poe works because of rugby. That's the real reason. Just
Beautiful.
chance. It happened. Yeah.
Beautiful. So, a couple of my heroes say there is no self expression and ignore yourself and The great jazz pianist Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this comes through me. Is art making, writing more self expression or more the author is a vehicle for whatever dominant culture, technology, environments?
Well, we are all vehicles of something, and so I would try to think that, yeah, because I haven't got any original idea in my brain. Everything I get it from somewhere else. So uh, things come across to my mind and they flow and turn out to be a piece of writing or a short story or an essay or a novel. So I agree with that. Yeah,
Can art making be egoless
egoless. What does it mean?
without without ego?
Oh no, no, no! It's the only thing you need because you are always alone. You are relying on yourself. You know that every fellow writer will try to destroy you because if you are worth something, he doesn't want somebody who. Nobody wants competition. So unless you enclose, and that's why you see that writers normally they live by themselves. They are, I wouldn't say antisocial, but they have not a social life. They have not groups of friends, and that's to be that's the ego. It's all they have. I wouldn't say that I am that way, but I am not a famous writer. Yeah.
Then, Marshall McLuhan probed Finnegan's Wake and said that artists dream awake, and not to sound elitist, everybody can dream awake, but we everyone has a power to create scenarios in their minds while they're sleeping. But
Hmm.
artists can create these scenarios and dream while they're awake.
Yeah.
How does dreams play a role in Joyce's creative process? You know,
Well, without knowing nothing about the wake, more than that it was an impossible book. That's the way I started. I started reading it, and I could feel that it was something like the language of dreams.
yeah,
Without nothing, with no previous idea, it's what I'm telling you. It's I started reading this before translating it, and what I got from the reading, plain reading as a normal reader, without the intention of translating it, just for reading it, something like it was the language of dreams. Something I told you in the beginning of this conversation. It reminded me to those situations where you are in bed, you are falling asleep or already asleep, and you get in your mind sentences or paragraphs of something beautiful which is flowing perfectly and you are not able to describe what it is when you wake up. What Joyce did, I don't know how, and basically I don't know why he did that. Nobody knows why he wrote the wake, but I think that he got that in his mind. He got something like a recreation of dreams, and there you have it. It's nothing that I can explain, of course.
no, you did well, and I appreciate it. There's a line, Marcelo, that goes, "You create what you resist." Comedian Bob Goldthwait morphed it into, "You are what you hate." James
Mm,
Joyce said, "It's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve." And Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, "Thank God I'm an atheist." So, do you think this played a role in Joyce's creative process at all, you create what you resist.
Well, in his case, that was his raw material for everything. He he didn't believe in the church, and the church gave him the instruction he needed to write the way he wrote against the church. And the same thing with the English language. He didn't hate the British, but he was against oppression, and that included speaking the language, as he told Mr. Deasy, we speak the language of the enemy, and he used the language of the enemy to rebuild or to create a new language, and he did the same with the Wake. So all he wrote was to create what he resisted. Dubliners, it's an example of that. Every single short story in Dubliners, you will see him speaking about paradise and the emptiness and everything and the poor people and all about that. So he resisted that, and he created all his books are about the things that he resisted. Yeah.
Very good. And there's another, Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and music. Excuse me, healing and movement.
Okay.
And he says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength. It's like flip a breakdown into a breakthrough, like Joyce did it 3 ways. He wanted to be Ibsen, so instead of becoming a great playwright, he sort of reinvented, like Ibsen did with theater, he reinvented the novel. He wanted to be a great singer, and because he wasn't the greatest singer, he created a novel that was like singing. And then he was going blind. And so he created a book that you had to hear. And, you read it, but the important thing is you shifted it from an eye experience to an ear experience. So tell me, Marcelo, a weakness that you turned into a strength.
Oh, I'm not exactly a coward, but I used to be afraid of, since I was a little boy, of very silly things, and at some stage I turned out to be not brave, but fronting up with my fears. It looks like a cliche, but it's right. I know I'm not lying in this. I fronted lots of things that I am or I was afraid or I'm still afraid, just not to brave me like a brave man, but just to, I didn't want to keep on fearing this or that.
Right.
I jumped from I would say it's not a parachute, but the other thing that you jump from a mountain and fly. What's the name of it?
Yeah, the hand glider.
Well, that, yeah. And somebody told me you should do that. I panic. I said, okay, because I know that I knew that I was going to panic. I said, well, keep calm. You're 65 years old. You're not a baby. If you have to die, well, let's die. It wasn't so risky. But I jumped up the air. There I went. So many things I do because I fear them.
Yeah, that's good. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
Isn't it the same thing?
Well,
it's very difficult to say what's what.
yeah.
I've got a conviction to do this. It's like, I wouldn't say. I don't know.
That's all right.
Compromise. Yeah. It's more pushy. It's more, you're forcing. And the conviction is for yourself. There's nobody pushing you. I got the conviction to do that, but nobody's asking you nothing. If there's compromise there's a third person who's waiting something from you. You have to demonstrate something. Yeah.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. Anger can be a productive emotion when.
For pushing your car, if you're running out of petrol. It
That
happened
is
to me, yeah, several times.
that,
Yeah.
that is a good answer.
Yeah.
So these are 5 quick Alan Watts questions in a couple words, just off the top of your head. Who started it all?
God,
Are we going to make it?
no.
Where do we Good laugh. Where do we put it?
Don't know.
Who's cleaning it up?
Somebody else?
Is it serious?
No, never.
Wow. We got about 10 more minutes. This has really been fun. How do you find peace of mind?
I never find it. No. Peace of mind, no. No, because nobody, no one can stop thinking. And if you think you are not in peace, you got lots of time to rest in peace. Grip. No. Peace of mind, no. I would say one thing is to have peace of mind, which I have not. One other thing which you already asked me is what I was worried about. Nothing. So
Yeah.
I'm not worried. That doesn't mean that I've got peace of mind. No.
Can you forget to die?
What I'm supposed to forget what? To die.
Can you forget to die?
No,
I'm
I
asking.
cannot.
You cannot. Okay.
No. I
What
will
is
not.
You will not.
No, good.
What is the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
Points of view, perception.
How long have you many years?
I beg your pardon?
How long have you been with your wife? How many years?
Oh, it's just 50.
How do you explain the longevity?
We're good friends. We were always, since the very beginning, we were good friends. Yeah. We enjoy each other. Yeah.
What's the biggest lessons you've learned from raising 6 kids, 6 children? Tell
Well,
me, tell me 1 or 2 lessons you've learned.
Flexibility of mind, not getting caged in rigid thoughts. And I learned lots of music, which I hated. And late in my life, I'm enjoying because one of my sons is providing me now the good music I used to hate 30 years before now. When there were 6 kids here, everybody making noises I didn't understand. Well, that music that I didn't understand, I am enjoying it now. And so that's what I understand. Lots of things, but
Yeah,
those are the most important things, yeah?
that's beautiful. Do you know the Argentinian composer Astor Piazzolla?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Yes,
You
of
know,
course.
he he changed the tango
Yeah,
and early in his career when he was changing it, he
yeah.
would be walking down the street and people would beat him up for
Yeah,
changing.
boo, boo. Yeah. Yeah.
If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
I would cross to the other sidewalk like this. How is it?
I've never had that answer. That's very good. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll? Over or under?
I know that there are theories, but I cannot make a decision yet.
Good.
I think it works both ways.
Yeah. Marcelo, if a publisher was to release your autobiography, what off the top of your head, what would be the title?
Of my biography?
Yeah,
Well, Borges said that any biography only consists of multiple changes of address, as as James Joyce did, 100 of different addresses. And in my case, I just had two or three. So I've been living in the same house for 35 years. So not even one single interesting thing he would have. So I would put, "Don't read this." That would be the title.
they want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell would it be?
I didn't think about that. Maybe I can tell you for the next one. Yeah. I don't know.
They, they want to build a statue in your honor. Where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
I should be made on clay and buried in the bottom of the sea, as deep as possible.
Beautiful. Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Both things. Never had and
Three
never
things.
want. Yeah.
It's three things. It's good, you never had it, but you never want it.
Well, money. Money I never
Yeah,
had.
yeah,
I never, and I would add a very important thing. I really never needed it. So,
yeah, it's good. That's most people say money, fame, and heroin.
and well, heroin. I would have liked to have a sniff of that, but I
Yeah,
wasn't brave enough.
yeah, not me neither. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
If I were where?
In a vat, VAT, a
Yeah,
vat
yeah, okay, yeah, yeah.
of vomit. You're in a vat of vomit
Ah,
up
yeah.
to your neck, and someone threw a bag of shit at your face. What would you do?
Shout.
Shout! What is what is the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Don't know.
No.
Today, well,
Yeah,
something inspiring.
yeah, in today's world, what inspires you? Any movement or shift or any
Now
sort of
I'm waiting for the new Pink Floyd or the new Freddie Mercury or the new Rolling Stones. I would love to die, but not today. To die after having seen one of those three things. Apart
very
from
good.
that, there's no motivation now.
Beautiful. So you know the artist Joseph Beuys. You know this guy? He
No.
he wrote he was so inspired by Finnegan's Wake, he
Yeah.
wrote another chapter to Finnegan's Wake. He just made one up. And he has a saying, it says, make the secrets productive. And Thornton Wilder, who was a huge Finnegan's Wake freak, skin of our teeth is based on Finnegan's Wake. He said in 1928, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time.
Yeah, I don't
You,
think.
yeah, you've laid your cards on the table for over 90 minutes, Marcelo. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this, but what's it really all about for you?
I would miss that card. I haven't got it. I don't know. I don't know. That's one more of the many, far too many things I don't know. I don't know.
Well, the beauty is that you can admit that.
Of course.
The poet Auden said that the mystery of art is that we don't know if it activates or pacifies us.
Yeah. it more activates you than pacifies. And I am certain because it's positive, it could be aggressive, and it's always invading one's eyes, one's
Yeah.
brain, in short. So it has more an action than an expectation. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate it. This has been super fun. So the last question is, what gives you the most optimism? Good laugh.
Yeah, no, the kids, my grandsons and granddaughters, of course.
Yeah.
Uh,
That is
and
the
people,
answer.
people in general,
Yeah.
people. There's lots, millions of good people, and let's hope. Why not?
Yeah.
It's not forbidden. Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. That's the last question. I got what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. They said, "What gives you the most optimism?" And he said, "Other people."
I didn't know that, but it's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not?
So it's really been fun sharing this time, and I'm going to hit the end button, but I don't want this to end. I hope we can keep the dialogue going over and over. We should do a whole salon with Hervé and me and you and talk
Oh.
more about Finnegan's Wake.
You need
But
an audience for that.
we play ping pong with James Joyce's head.
It's terrible, terrible. Yeah. Very extremely clever,
I
and he's
appreciate.
fun.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
fun, and you were too. I
Oh.
loved your laugh, and you're very witty. So thank you so much.
Ciao, amigo.
Ciao, bello.
See you. Ciao, amigo. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao. Thank you. Thank you.